told you life was gonna be this way.
The slave trade was an elaborate expedition across the Atlantic Ocean that transported African slaves to the New World. It started around the 15th century after the Portuguese explored the west coast, but the official use of slave trade wasn't fully utilized until the discovery of the Americas.
When the Europeans traveled to the New World, they needed plantation workers, so they used Native Americans. This didn't work well for the Europeans. The Indians got diseases from them because the Native Americans had weak immune systems towards the European diseases.
Therefore, the Europeans turned to slaves. Slaves were people who are the legal property of another and were forced to obey them. However, Europeans didn't capture them, they traded for them. Fellow Africans captured other Africans for sugar, textiles, etc., in return for trading off their friends.
Once captured, slaves were chained together so they wouldn't run away. When it was time to board the ship, 400 people were allowed to go on each vessel.
The most well-known captain of one of these ships was John Newton, but he's more famous for his hymn Amazing Grace than from his time as a slave ship captain.
Then they were crammed together into tight holding spaces. These areas were only 4 square feet of room per person, and they were separated by sex.
The slaves were not allowed to come out of their areas. Consequently, they were forced to lie in their own filth for a significant amount of time. However, they were allowed to come on deck to dance, so they wouldn't lose muscle mass.
Body mass was important to the buyers in the New World because it showed the slaves were strong enough to provide crucial work. All in all, the bigger the slave, the bigger the pay.
However, slaves quickly picked up on this tactic and refused to eat. Consequently, some of them starved to death. It's not like they could say, these slaves would be dead for multiple days or even weeks without being found. Therefore, the smell of rotting flesh became a common odor among the other kidnappees. Finally, after being found, the dead bodies were thrown overboard. Some slaves eventually saw this as an escape.
Slaves started committing non-racial seppuku by jumping overboard to end their misery. Let's take a look and see what the thought bubble has to say.
Sharks actually followed slave ships because they knew their bodies would be thrown overboard. Talk about a full-course meal.
Another way to die was being brought up on deck to dance. When this happened, the slaves would get frustrated and rebel against the crew. This caused crew members to defend themselves against the mob by shooting cannons, which killed numerous slaves.
One of the slaves who actually survived was Olaudah Aquino. He was kidnapped at the age of 11 and taken to the West Indies. From there, he went to Virginia, where he was purchased by a sea captain, Michael Henry Pascal, with whom he traveled widely. He received some education before he bought his own freedom in 1766. After he settled in England, he became an active abolitionist, lecturing against the cruelty of British slave owners in Jamaica.
After a 6 to 8 week journey across the Atlantic, the slaves were brought to markets to be sold to landowners or the wealthy class. Slaves were sold for about $650 in 1845, which is roughly $14,500 in today's money.
The African Americans were a perfect match in the New World because the climates in Africa were compatible to the Americas. However, the living conditions in the New World was often unbearable for slaves. They worked numerous hours on plantation fields and often got either injured or died.
Fun fact, some slaves would often overwork themselves to the point of death, and others got their extremities cut off inside machines. Imagine all you wanted to do was break down sugarcane with a machine, but ended up getting your hand stuck inside the apparatus. Not fun.
The slave trade wasn't really noticed as a problem until the end, which was roughly 366 years after it started. Many people supported this like Britain, but those who didn't, abolitionists, campaigned against slavery. However, this took a long time for British government to change this because slave trade provided tons of money for their economy.
Later on, Britain passed an Act of Parliament in 1807 which abolished slave trade in all British colonies, although it wasn't until later in 1838 that slavery was officially abolished in these colonies.
And now it's time for the open letter, but first let's see what's in the secret compartment today. It's a ship. I wonder how many slaves died on this one. Dear slaves, 12.5 million of you went through this, but only 11 million of you made it. That would be equivalent to everyone in Philadelphia dying. Not only did you go through the hardest times of your lives, probably wishing diapers were already invented, but you show us how it's like to be brave and just stick with it. You show us what it means to be strong, even when you were sleeping with dead bodies as pillows. Although some of you went to different places, like Saudi Arabia through the Trans-Saharan trade system, and some of you went to India and China. It's all slavery, no matter how bad it is. One day, you'll get your freedom. Best wishes, Abby Dion.
Peace, love, and no slavery.